Good morning, everyone. We will be recording the workshop today. And because we are recording it, if you go over to the chat area, I am adding our Tennyson warning in there. It gives you some information about what Microsoft Teams collects in the backgrounds of recordings. And with the recording today, if you need any transcriptions, you're more than welcome to apply that to your screen in Microsoft Teams by at the top right. There's 3 dots and you can click on there and add any transcription that you may need to access this presentation. During the presentation, please do keep yourself in mute since we will have a fair amount of attendees today. But we do want to encourage you to use the chat function. Any questions, thoughts, or things that are, you're thinking about as we go along, please put them in the chat as we go along. We have colleagues that are going to be viewing that chat and we'll be jumping in, with those questions as we go. And it's usually best if we answer the questions while we're on those particular slides or in those particular screens. And then at the very end, we will hopefully have a little bit of time for any of just those last type of questions that we may have. I'm going to go ahead and share the beginning of our presentation here so we can kick everything off. Okay, thank you again for attending this morning. This is our official Dual Training Grant 2024 Request for Proposal Writing Workshop. We know that this workshop came about very quickly. We just on Tuesday released the request for proposal for this program and are already hosting the writing workshop. We will be recording the workshop, as you know, and the workshop itself, along with all of these PowerPoint slides, will be published on the Office of Higher Ed's website by the end of next week. So you will have access to both and be able to freely go through those documents and help remind you of any details that you may need. I want to begin with some welcome and introductions. We're really excited to have you attend today. My name's Jacqueline Malsletton. I am the Assistant Manager of our Grants and Workforce Initiatives at the Minnesota Office of Higher Education. And so I oversee and manage all of those aspects that have to do with the dual training grant and that funding that goes to employers. And then I have the honor and privilege of working with an outstanding team over at the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. And they are the folks that get to work directly with those employers and help set up all of the occupations that are eligible for the grant. I'm going to pass it over starting with Dan and their team to introduce themselves.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline. I'm Dan Solomon. I'm the manager of the Minnesota Dual Training Pipeline Program here at Department of Labor and Industry. Want to thank everybody for joining this morning and for your interest in doing this earn and learn model of dual training. With that, one of our colleagues is unfortunately on the road and not able to attend, Eric Holton. So I would just say that he leads our outreach in manufacturing and agriculture. And so for those of you who are in those industries and are interested, feel free to reach out to Eric. But with that, I am excited to have our other 2 colleagues. And so I'm going to kick it over to Kathleen to have her introduce herself.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. I'm Kathleen Gordon, and I am a dual training pipeline program consultant. And I head up our outreach for healthcare and for childcare, our new industry. And I will send it over to Madeline.
Thanks, Kathleen. Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. I'm also a dual training pipeline consultant, Maddie Martini, and I support the industries of IT and transportation, another one of our new industries. And then as a whole team, we do support the legal cannabis industry, which is our 3rd round out of our new industries. And I'll pass it back to Jacqueline.
Thank you, everyone. Our agenda today. So we have 2 hours together, and every time I've done this type of a workshop, we do utilize that whole time, but we will take a break right in the middle as we transition kind of from content into the portal and walking you through application steps. Today, we're going to start off with navigating websites. I want to make sure I can show you the websites. You have all the tools you need. We're going to move into a dual training grant overview. So you just have that high level overview of what the dual training grant is. We're going to discuss the funding availability for this specific request for proposal, all of the eligibility criteria. Then we're going to discuss the selection criteria and process and that evaluation. And then we're going to take that break and then move into the actual new portal system. And then we're going to wrap up today by just a few little highlights of grantee planning in case you do move from that applicant to grantee stage, and any of those just additional questions that we kind of want to wrap up with. Let's begin with navigating websites. In the presentation, I have 2 slides. The very first slide is going to be your Minnesota Dual Training Pipeline websites. This is everything over on the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. And the second slide is the Dual Training Grant, which is everything over on the Minnesota Office of Higher Education. I'm going to stop sharing the presentation, and I'm actually going to share my web browser now so I can walk you through those different websites here. Okay, we're going to start with the Department of Labor and Industry's web pages. With the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry, you are going to notice on the left-hand side for their menu bar, everything comes under this larger heading of apprenticeship and dual training. We do want to focus on the dual training components since we're not going to be discussing the registered apprenticeship side. With the Minnesota Dual Training Pipeline pages, you can see on their primary main page, there are all 7 of the eligible industries. You can see an image and the language, and when you click on them, for advanced manufacturing, for example, you are going to get a page that's going to list out all of the validated pyramids and occupational competency summaries. These are each of the eligible occupations for the grant. You would go ahead, let's select manufacturing engineer, for example. When you select that link, this is where you are going to see the actual competency model pyramid. These pyramids and models are essential in your application process because the different competencies that are listed in this pyramid, you are going to want to be using that exact language in your proposal narrative pieces. So I recommend that right away you go into the pipeline website, you save your competency models for all of the occupations you intend to apply for. And then you're always want to, if you are awarded, you are always going to want to make sure you have these on file because you will be needing these for the additional steps that, that come with being an actual grantee. On the pipeline website, there's a couple other links and pages I'd like to point out. The first one is pipeline events. The pipeline team is just fantastic about training and additional resources and workshops just to help employers be successful with their dual training models. So they have Pipeline 101 events. They have industry forums, they have workforce community conversations where they come to you. They have these outstanding speaker series where they focus on topics that employers are telling them is a need. And all of these workshops and trainings are definitely free for the employers. And so I really encourage you to make sure you're aware of what pipeline events may be coming up. There's also a link on here for pipeline partner employers. This map is just wonderful to be able to see where all the current pipeline employers are throughout our state of Minnesota. And then really, really importantly, there is the pipeline related instruction inventory. This is an inventory to be meant to be a starting point for employers to discover who might be out there in the area of Minnesota that could offer this type of training for these different types of occupations. So let's say we're going to do advanced manufacturing, and then let's go with that manufacturing engineer since we had already discussed that. And we're going to click search. And here you're going to start finding the different programs. You can click on these headings to organize the information. So it could be alphabetized, so starting with your training institutions that start with an A. And then you can go ahead and click on those programs directly to be linking out to their pages. Again, this is just a fantastic tool to be utilizing as you are trying to determine those training providers you may be partnering with. And then also on the pipeline pages, just kind of wrap up their pages, are the pipeline tools. So this area does help provide a tool to help with on-the-job training. So if you're an employer that does not yet have on-the-job training that is built out and has a system for tracking, this would be a great place to start then, because all of the occupations are listed here and there is a template for each of those occupations. Let's move over now to the actual dual training grant pages that are with the Minnesota Office of Higher Ed. And then just as a quick reminder, if you're just joining us, please do keep your system on mute, and we will be recording and posting all PowerPoint presentation materials by the end of next week. With the dual training grant web pages for the Office of Higher Education, our very first page is going to be that primary information about our program, what it means to have a dual training grant. The page that you're really going to want to be mindful about is this dual training grant request for proposal page. And this is the page that is going to have all of the steps and information and access to get you through the actual application process. On this page, the one document I really want everybody to be saving right after this meeting is our dual training grant request for proposal document. You click on that link right on the page and it is going to go ahead and bring up that PDF document for you. This document has all of the rules and requirements. We are going to be talking and going through slides today about the eligibility pieces, right? But this request for proposal has all of the extra details in it. And so you need to save this document, thoroughly read this document, add comments and highlight things and make sure you have a good understanding of it. If there's pieces in here that you don't understand or have additional follow-up questions, please do email me directly with those questions. We're accepting technical questions through April 9th, and we will answer all of those technical questions in a document that'll be posted on the website weekly, because then all potential applicants have access to the answers for those questions. And then with that being said, because we were talking about questions, there's this link on our page currently that does say frequently asked questions. That page is not functioning and will not be functioning. It may link out to different places. As of now, we are working with IT to get it updated, but just please know that we do not have a current frequently asked questions page. In addition to, you're going to see this other page that says dual training provider directory. Please do not utilize that page either. We are working to get messaging on there that it is unavailable as well. I'm going to stop sharing for our website pages here so we can go back into the presentation.
Jacqueline, we do have one question that came up. Absolutely. And I know you're probably going to cover it, but just thank you. We are a nonprofit who gives scholarships to healthcare workers, students, dental assistants. Do we need a collaborative partner or multiple partners? It looks like they work with dental offices.
Mm-hmm. So the applicants of the dual training grant, and we will go into this in a lot more detail, they're the employers that are applying for this grant. So if you have employers within your network, you can share this information with them, and then those employers can connect back with us. Specifically, we'll connect back with Kathleen, who works with all of our healthcare employers, to talk about a dual training model, what it means, those requirements, and to help them get set up.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let's move into the dual training grant overview pieces. To begin, to give you an idea of this collaboration type of a model, So in 2014, the Minnesota legislature established the Pipeline Project, and they established that over at the Department of Labor and Industry. A year later, in 2015, they decided to provide a funding source to help employers get started with these dual training models. And so they created the dual training grant, and they decided to house that over at the Minnesota Office of Higher Education. So from that very beginning, both agencies have had to work collaboratively together in order to deliver the programming and the grant component. Now, as of today, the Pipeline Project is a fully sustainable program known as Minnesota Dual Training Pipeline. The concept and everything around this dual component is here. So really what we're talking about when we talk about dual training model, dual training grant, that dual piece is that you have individuals who are receiving, formal related instruction with a qualified training provider. They're getting all of that knowledge through the coursework while they are also earning their regular wages with their employer, and their employer is creating structured on-the-job training for them to participate in. And the employer is looking at, you are attending, course A, B, and C at the moment. Therefore, we're going to create on-the-job training projects and plans and mentorship opportunities that are going to align directly with that current coursework. So both are happening at the exact same time. Those employees then are able to gather that knowledge from their formal training, but then be practicing it in a structured way that applies to their current job or their upcoming job that they will be in. We want to talk a little bit more about the actual roles of the two agencies so you can kind of get an understanding of where this information and communication is happening. I'm going to turn it over to Kathleen to just walk us over these few areas that the pipeline team specializes in.
Sure, thank you. So we as a team really have do our work within what we consider 3 buckets. So we have industry forums throughout the year. We have 3, and those are really utilized for us to be directed in our work. We invite everyone who is in those specific industries to attend. We have 2, we have one in November, one usually in the spring, and then we'll have an all industry forum in June. And we talk about industry trends and needs, and really we're looking to talk about other occupations within that industry that you're having a difficult time filling. We go about our work, secondly, with competency councils. So when we are identifying these occupations that are in demand, we again get together folks in that industry to talk about what does a person really need to know to be successful at your company in that occupation. And then finally, we provide dual training consulting. So basically, we will meet with anyone in the state to talk about how dual training might work for you to fill to fulfill your workforce needs by doing an earn and learn model. So, and we have a lot of tools like Jacqueline spoke about on our website that we can, talk further about to help you work with dual training.
Thanks, Kathleen. And then Kathleen, can you we looked at the pyramid already on the website, but can you just touch on these 3 areas that we really want to be pulling from, especially for our application?
Yep, absolutely. So every one of our occupations has a pyramid that we have built to really, you could use this as a guide when you're putting together your dual training program. So the top of each pyramid, the occupation-specific competencies, are the competencies that someone would learn through on-the-job training, or most likely learn them through on-the-job training. The second 2 tiers, industry sector and industry-wide, are the competencies that someone would most likely learn through their education. And the top left-hand side is a blue box that says employer requirements. And that is always intentionally left blank because we want this to be a very flexible model. And so if you have specific needs because you have maybe a niche organization that employs this, for example, LPNs, Then and maybe other competencies don't exactly specify your needs for those, then we want you to be able to put those in that box, because we're flexible and we want to make sure that you are getting all of your needs met when you're training your person. So yeah, we would highly encourage you to use these pyramids when you are applying for this grant. So.
Perfect. And then we can transition over to the Office of Higher Ed and the Dual Training Grant team and what we help do. So we are responsible for creating, releasing, and managing this request for proposal process that you are part of now. We are the agency that determines and announces those grant awards. Then we move into helping the setup and managing of those grant contracts throughout the entire grant period. We do all of the processing for grant reimbursement. So we're the entity that helps the funding flow from the dual training grant to those employers, provide various training and supports throughout the year that are related only specifically to the grant. So the pipeline program has more of those broader and larger type of training and industry supports on that side, but we will provide trainings that are very specific to the grant. We conduct grant monitoring visits at mid-year points for our grantees. We collect and analyze annual grant report data and publish that annual grant report each year. We do have all of those reports available on our website if you did want to take time to look through them. We have a wonderful dual training grant handout that you are welcome to download. It is right on our website as well. And that handout is wonderful if you want to share it with other people in your organization, or like the question we got a little bit earlier in the workshop. If you have a network of employers that may be interested, this is the perfect handout to hand to them and give them so they can get a little bit of information and be able to connect back with us. And then on our website as well, I always like to point out that we have success profiles, and these are the wonderful faces of individuals who we've been able to share those success profiles about, and all of the things and experiences that they have had over the last few years with the dual training grant. Let's move into funding availability for this grant period. This is the 2024 request for proposal process. It is our 13th time of putting out a request for proposal. The proposal period, so really the time that you're able to apply, is going to be March 12th through April 22nd. April 22nd, the portal system, the proposal process is going to close at 11:59 p.m. It will not be reopened. If items are not submitted or are not complete, it will be an application that is incomplete and will not move forward. You will get notice if that is the case and that it is not moving forward. We have $5 million available for this year. That is the highest level of funding that we have ever had in the history of the dual training grant. So we are very excited to be able to award those applicants. And then once the awarding happens, the actual grant period or contract period that'll get set up will be sometime in August of 2024, and it's going to operate then through August of 2025. There are two different budget categories. You are applying one time. So you will indicate both of these different categories within the actual portal. The first budget category is for the related instruction costs. The related instruction costs, one applicant can apply for up to $150,000. If that applicant who is applying is considered a large employer, and how we determine that is by their annual gross revenue, and if it exceeded 25 million in the previous calendar year, we will be looking at calendar year 2023 for that. If it did exceed that, they are going to be required to contribute 25% in a grant match, and that 25% needs to be like cash directly toward related instruction. We do cap out that max or that match, and we cap it out at $50,000, which actually equates to, we want to cap it out at $2,000 per dual trainee. So one trainee then ultimately with those large employers could benefit for up to $8,000 toward their instruction. The expenditures for related instruction are limited to just the tuition the fees, the required and recommended books, and the required and recommended materials. These are the charges from your training provider. Your training provider is giving you a bill with these itemized items broken down for your specific trainee. That is what it is covering. And the dual trainee themselves can, from the grant only, receive $6,000 for the year. Then the second budget category is trainee support costs. The trainee support costs that you can apply for, it is going to be 10% of what you're requesting in your related instruction costs. And it can go all the way then up to $15,000. So if you request a full $150,000 for related instruction, you can request a whole $15,000 in trainee supports. The trainee support side does not have a grant match requirement. And the expenditures for that are going to include transportation, mileage, lodging, meals, tutoring services, translation interpreter, and accessibility services. There's more information in the request for proposal about the breakdown of these different categories. And then the dual trainee maximum amount for that, there is not a maximum for that. And that trainee support costs amount also does not go towards a dual trainee's like lifetime eligibility amounts either. With all of these type of expenditure categories, it's very, very important to constantly be, once you're a grantee, be documenting this. We go all the way down to individual receipts to make sure all of the money is accounted for. To continue this, so the applicants, they must always put in an amount for that related instruction category. So that is essential. You have to do that. However, if you are an applicant who does not need any assistance on the trainee support side, you don't need to request any funding in that category. The dual trainee themselves, who would be your employee, they can benefit in a lifetime for up to $24,000. And again, that trainee support amounts that they're receiving isn't going to go towards this. It is just looking at the related instruction amounts, and it can go up to $24,000. A dual trainee does not need to participate in a dual training grant consecutively. So we might have a trainee who participated 3 years ago and they completed maybe a 1-year program, and they're going to be coming back into the grant with this request for proposal. That is okay. The money just keeps still tracking, but the time frame did not need to be consecutive. And then always just being mindful of if a dual trainee, changes to a new employer during that grant period, the grant isn't attached to the employee themselves. It's actually attached to the employer. So the funding doesn't just move with them. So if a trainee leaves employment in December of 2024, leaves employment and they're going to be continuing their education in January of 2025, well, the grant has stopped for them because the grant stays with their employer. I'll take a quick pause. Kathleen, anything in the chat just about the funding eligibility side?
No, nothing there now. So
Perfect.
Folks, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. Thank you.
Let's move into all the eligibility components. We're going to start with a couple of the highlights. So in order for your dual training grant proposal to be eligible, we need to have all these different areas that are built into it. So we need to make sure we have eligible industries and occupations. We need to make sure the applicant themselves is eligible, that the dual trainees are eligible, the related instruction, the actual programming, the industry recognized degree, certificate, credential that the trainees are earning, the related instruction training provider is eligible to provide the training, and then on-the-job training is meeting the qualifications as well. So this is really important as you come into this proposal process, knowing that your industries, your occupations, your employers partnering with the applicant organization, the related instruction training providers, all of those pieces cannot be added after the proposal deadline. So April 22nd will happen and none of these can be added to. Of course, if you are given an award and then you're going through the setup process and you decide, you know what, we're probably not going to train in that one occupation, or you know what, we're not actually going to partner with that training provider, and they come off of your plans, that's okay. We just can't add to it. It's very important to know and have a good plan for your dual training model right now and to have well-established partnerships with your training providers at this point in time. This slide just shows those eligible industries and occupations. So our industries are advanced manufacturing, agriculture, childcare, healthcare services, information technology, legal cannabis industry, and transportation. On this slide, all of these links will bring you directly out to the pipeline program pages that we previously looked over, and that is then where you are able to find all of the occupations that are listed. And the request for proposal has all of this listed out. Let's talk about who can actually apply for the dual training grant. So our applicants, they need to either be the employer themselves, or they need to be an organization of employers. And by an organization of employers, we are meaning like a chamber of commerce or workforce development organization or a membership organization that has employer type of membership and is able then to handle the grant for those employers. Organizations of employers is rare in applying for this grant, and we want to make sure if you are one of those organizations and you have not worked with this grant before, that you immediately get connected with the pipeline team so we can talk through those details, because there are a lot of different things that happen administratively that we need to make sure you're aware about. Those employers or organizations, they need to be following into these following types. So they're going to be categorized as a business entity, a nonprofit organization, a political subdivision, the state of Minnesota, or a tribal sovereign nation. The applicant needs to have a dual training program. So we've talked about what a dual training program is. They need to have that. They need to be employing, or they maybe will be employing their dual trainees, but in order to be a dual trainee, they do need to be employed. So this cannot be something where they're getting the training and then they complete the training and now you're going to hire them. They, from day one, need to be your employee. You have or will be having an agreement with your related instruction training provider. We're actually going to have this step happen upon awarding. So if you are awarded the grant, we will help walk you through the process of signing an agreement with your training provider. And then we talked about those larger entities and the 25 million needing to pay that 25% match. And then as a reminder, with that match, any like wages or in-kind contributions, that is not considered part of the match. The match is really truly paying directly for related instruction, tuition fees, books, materials. And then if you're a current dual training grant recipient, you need to make sure you are in good standing with all current grant requirements. And if you're a current or prior recipient of any Minnesota State grant program throughout the entire enterprise, you do need to be in good standing on all of those items as well. This slide does unpack a little bit further what I had verbalized before about an example of an organization of employers. So Chamber of Commerce or an industry association, workforce development organization, those are most common. And then that organization will be representing those employer partners and be responsible for meeting all of the grant requirements. A related instruction training provider is not an eligible applicant and they cannot apply for the grant on behalf of employers. And an organization of employers can only partner with employers who meet the eligible industry and occupation parameters that they've applied for. And when they go ahead and submit that proposal, the organization of employers must be identified. So all of those employer partners need to be listed directly in that proposal. So we know that there's an established partnership with those employers. And that list cannot be added to after the April 22nd deadline. Let's move into our eligible dual trainees. So these are really the employees of the employer, and the employer is the grantee. Those eligible dual trainees, they need to be employed. I know we talked about that, but I really want to make sure you understand that they need to be employed. They could be a new hire or they could be an incumbent worker. Either is just fine. And then they need to be employed by that employer. they need to physically be working at a location in Minnesota. So the actual employer themselves, maybe their central office isn't in Minnesota, but they have a physical location in Minnesota. That's okay. The trainees themselves, maybe they're a resident of North Dakota, or maybe they're a resident of Iowa. That's fine as well, as long as they're physically coming into the state and are working at that Minnesota location, then that's okay. These dual trainees cannot have already obtained these competency standards. So it's not a program for like recertifying. It is a program. They don't have these competency standards, and they need this type of a training program in order to be proficient in their career. And then they need to be earning the industry recognized degree, certificate, or credential upon completing this program. They cannot enter into this program with, well, I'm just going to take a course, or, well, maybe, I don't know. They need to be committed to completing their program and actually earning that degree, certificate, or credential.
Jacqueline, we do have one question. Under trainee support costs, I see lodging. Are we able to request funding to provide employee students with a rent or mortgage stipend?
No, that is written into the request for proposal. No. These trainee support costs are directly tied to the related instruction only. So an instance in where you're going to see lodging happen is, what if we have a training provider that's on the other side of the state and they have to go there physically once a month, let's say, and they have to get a hotel to do their 4 days of on-site related instruction. That is where the lodging piece is going to play a role and step in. There are some instances in some programs as well that we have heard they have to go to a campus location across the state, maybe for 1 or 2 weeks, and the campus helps set them up maybe in dorm type of facilities, but there is a bill associated with that. So that is what it's looking at. It is not looking at rent, mortgage. It's not looking at regular room and board, like to live on campus full time. It is just that lodging where that's been creating a barrier for them to travel so far to their training.
Okay, and another one, under
Mhm.
trainee support costs, the next one, they, let's see, they do not need to be employed by me at the time of application, correct? Meaning I can use the grant dollars as a recruitment tactic for hiring.
Correct. At the time of your request for proposal, you will indicate how many trainees you intend to train, but they do not need to be your employees at the time of proposal. They need to be your employees before they actually come into your work plan as a dual trainee. And there's multiple steps that have to get taken in order to get them all the way up to this dual trainee level. But right now, request for proposal, you could be awarded and use this as a recruitment mechanism. Absolutely.
And Juliana says, does this mean that hybrid work is not an option?
Hybrid work could be an option. The whole purpose is to make sure they're physically at your work locations. So it depends what that hybrid work is. If you had an individual who is a resident of another state, lives in another state, and is 100%, doing all of the work for the Minnesota company via teleworking, that's not going to be eligible because that individual is not coming in to your physical Minnesota location and working physically in Minnesota. So that's not going to be an option. But if you have an employee who, works at the Minnesota location X amount of days, but then does some of their work remotely, that's fine as well. It'll depend kind of where your employee lives and things.
And Maria says, for childcare, can this cover the cost of lost wages or a substitute teacher for work time missed due to training in school?
No, it cannot. So this is not going to be going toward any type of wages, whether it is wages for the employer to administer the grant, whether it is lost wages for the actual dual trainee themselves. Those are pieces that every grantee works out kind of for themselves. We've seen really fantastic solutions. We have some grantees who will actually pay the wages, so much or so many hours regardless of actually working them, so they can utilize that time then for their schooling pieces. We've seen other grantees go above and beyond with helping connect their employees to other resources that can then help because some of the wage loss is happening. So really each grantee approaches that differently, but this grant can't help pay for it.
And the support costs, is it only a percentage of the related instruction costs?
Yes, as far as like your maximum. So it goes all the way up to 15,000, but if you're only requesting, you know, $10,000 for the grant, we're only going to go up to the $1,000. So it's only going to be 10% of what you're requesting for related instruction.
And Matthew must be coming from a large organization, because he said, just so I am clear, we can, as an employer, cover $8,000 of related expenses per year, and we would then be reimbursed $6,000.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. And is the grant applicable for ABA therapy for autistic children? They can contact me about that because we can look into that. That's pretty specific. And then also for curriculum that a student successfully tests out that are required for a degree, will that be covered by the grant rather than the full class?
No, that is written into the request for proposal as well. Test out fees are not, because you have a course you're testing out of. There's no on-the-job training component because you're testing out of it and then a fee is being associated. So test out fees are not going to be covered through this grant.
That's it for now.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so with our dual trainees, the dual trainees employment cannot be contingent upon completion of a dual training program. A good example for this would be, let's say you have a program for certified nursing assistants. You bring them in on employment as a different type of title, right? And then you're working to get their certified nursing assistant, but they don't actually complete the program. Their employment can't be contingent on them completing that. They should have been hired as your employee and have another role in the organization. We don't want it to be a scenario where if they don't earn their programs and degrees, that their employment ends. So making sure that they are really your employee, regardless of completing this program, they can earn their wages and work for you. And then information that would identify an individual dual trainee, like their name or any really specific things that somebody could figure out who that trainee is. Please make sure that that is not included anywhere in this request for a proposal, because that is private information for your trainee and we want to make sure that that is not shared. Nearly all of the proposal materials can be made public documents, and therefore we don't want any of our trainees listed in there. And then we did already talk about this with the questions, that the applicant does not need to determine the specific dual trainee at the time of applying, but upon receiving that grant award, that is when those trainees need to be identified, and so they can begin recruiting. Let's move into the related instruction component. So this is really that formal instruction, the coursework, and those requirements that go into that coursework. So it needs to be provided by an eligible training provider. We'll talk about that soon. It needs to be meeting one or more of the competency standards. So the pyramids, those two areas that Kathleen had pointed out earlier, you need to make sure this program is meeting those competency standards. And then the program does need to be instructor-led for a majority of the time. An instructor needs to be leading this content. That content can be in the mode of a virtual atmosphere, but they do need to be leading it. And then it needs to actually be resulting in these degrees, certificates, or credentials. It cannot be a program where, like, here's the content and now you're completely on your own. Yeah, we know there's a licensure, we know there's an exam, there's other components to get a certificate or credential, but we're not helping you with that. We're just doing the programming. Nope, the whole program needs to go through the entire cycle so the individual can walk out actually having those degrees, certificates, and credentials. To continue on the related and instruction side, again, it can be facilitated in person or virtual modes. With any of those modes, though, it has to be that qualified instructor. They need to be employed or contracted with that training provider. They need to be delivering that content for a majority of the program. And the program, any programs that are self-paced, any programs that instructor is available for support, those are not going to be covered by dual training grant funds. So really focusing in on those programs that are instructor-led. OHE does not require dual trainee to achieve a minimum number of related instruction credits or hours within that grant period. However, you need to keep in mind the grant maximums. So the grant maximum is $24,000. So really, when you're setting your trainee up for success, you need to be making sure that they are completing these degree certificates or credentials within the $24,000 amount, which usually equates to about 4 years because of that $6,000 cap on each year. There are some different circumstances that may play into this, but when you're setting them up initially, they should be able to complete. And then we want to move into what those eligible industry recognized degrees, certificates, and credentials are. We have these different categories. It's going to be certificate, diploma, or degrees. They're issued by post-secondary institutions. These are going to be your academic programs that you are earning credits on your transcript that are financial aid eligible for the most part. Some certificates may not be. And then we're going to have registered apprenticeship certifications or certificates. These are registered apprenticeships with the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry. The specific employer has it on file as a registered apprenticeship. Then there are our occupational licenses and registration programs. And then there are certifications that are issued or recognized by like the industry or the professional association at large. So these are larger in general type of programs. And at this time, we do not have any, but it is written into statute that in the future, other certificates as approved by the commissioner may be eligible. With those degree certificates or credentials, they really do need to be tangible, transferable, recognized by the industry on a universal level. Any type of thing that is a certificate of completion program, continuing educations, an individual course or courses, professional development, all of those types of areas are not eligible for the dual training grant. If you do have a program that is more geared towards those areas, definitely reach out to Kathleen and their team. They may have some other resources or know of some other grants in the state enterprise that might be a better fit. Related instruction training providers. These are the entities that are actually going to be providing the formal instruction. They need to be operating legally in Minnesota. This is the different ways that they can operate legally in our state. So they could either be operated by the Board of Trustees of Minnesota State Colleges. That is your 2-year and 4-year public institutions. Or they could be the Board of Regents of the University of Minnesota, so any of our University of Minnesota campuses. The second way is that they're registered as a post-secondary institution. These are going to be all of your private universities. The next is licensed as a post-secondary institution. These are going to be your private companies. And then lastly, there is this category of exempt from registration and licensure. This last category often will require additional steps. And I have a bullet point under here to kind of list out what some of those exemptions are. They're all written directly into statute. So in general, it's registered schools, the degree granting religious schools, SARA schools, licensed schools, and non-degree religious schools. The SARA schools is the one area that not a lot of additional work would have to be done about, but these are schools in the nation that have agreed to come into a consortium type of agreement where they can provide instruction to students of different states. And so if you are looking at a training provider that is a college or university outside of the state of Minnesota, we have to just make sure that they're part of this SARA consortium programming, and then we can move forward with getting them added. To continue that conversation, if your training provider does not fall into those first 3 primary categories and you think they might need to be looked at for an application for exemption, that process is going to actually happen with our licensing and registration department. So you can do that by contacting Kate McCartan, and her information is on here. It's also available in the request for proposal. The training providers, just to kind of point this out, they need to operate legally in Minnesota, but they don't need to be based and located in Minnesota. So they could be an out-of-state training provider. And eligible related instruction training providers, they do need to support that trainee through examination, licensing, registration procedures, all of those things that would be required for them to actually be earning that degree, certificate, or credential. And then at the time of the proposal submission, the applicant must identify those training providers, and those training providers cannot be added after the April 22nd deadline. We have two different resources that are wonderful for you to start your search in training providers if you don't already know kind of where to go with that. And the first I did show you earlier in the workshop. This is that dual training pipeline related instruction inventory. You can select your industry, your occupation, and you're going to get a list of the ones in Minnesota. So not out of state necessarily, but the ones in Minnesota that are able to go for programming. And then also we do have My Higher Education Minnesota College Search, and this is going to focus more on the college side, but it is also a great starting point. Let's move into eligible on-the-job training to make sure that you know where this is happening. So with eligible on-the-job training, this is the other component. We've talked a lot about related instruction and that formal piece, but you as the employer have to have structured on-the-job training that's aligning with that related instruction. We have to have both components happening. And so there are 5 common types of effective OJT. These are all listed and more detailed on the pipeline website. And they consist of job shadowing, mentorship, cohort-based training, assignment-based, and discussion-based. So employers are not limited to, but often utilize these different common types. And please do go out to the pipeline website to read more about that, or connect with one of the pipeline consultants to talk through what that might look like for you specifically. With on-the-job training, it needs to at least include one of the 5 types that we just listed previously in that slide. Your dual trainees, they have to be earning their regular wages during OJT. This cannot be like an unpaid situation. This is their regular wages. If there's a situation, and this can happen maybe, if it's instructors of related instruction, they cannot also be your OJT trainers. So they're always usually is, but there definitely needs to be that separation between related instruction instructors and on-the-job training trainers. The on-the-job training does not include the related instruction coursework in which a dual trainee is receiving credit, and that their training provider costs are associated with that coursework. Examples of this are going to be like practicum courses, clinical courses, or internship courses, where you are going to see these items on an individual's transcript. You're going to see a cost associated with it from your training provider. That is not on-the-job training. On-the-job training would be in addition to these types of courses. Applicants have the flexibility in designing their on-the-job training plans, and there's not a requirement for the minimum number of OJT hours. However, you do need to keep in mind that a trainee needs to be learning competencies through on-the-job training while attending related instruction. So you've got to find a good balance between their coursework and their on-the-job training, so both are simultaneously happening. For on-the-job training, I'm going to show you this more detail once we get to the portal step. But in the portal, I do want to call this piece out. There is an area where we have you upload a table, chart, or graph to illustrate your on-the-job training. And you're going to upload one of these for each occupation that you are applying for. And there's a reminder again that you need to make sure at least one of those 5 common types is in that plan. We did provide a few different headings. If you don't have already a robust OJT plan, and you don't, you might already have, spreadsheets or an internal system that tracks this and shows this. And so you can just show us that and upload those. But if you don't already have that and you need to create something from scratch, these types of headings are kind of what is going to be needed at minimum. You can also go back out to the Pipeline's website go to those tools that we talked about, and there's a tool for each occupation, and that document could be utilized as well for helping you get started with your on-the-job training plan. So this is just a sample. You don't have to use it, but we wanted to give you just a little bit of guidance on where to go on that on-the-job training plan that does need to be uploaded. We have 2 more slides and we're going to be taking a break. And so is there any questions on the eligibility side before I move into the competitive priorities?
Let's see, Jacqueline, there was one. Am I understanding correctly that we apply annually for these funds? Do employers apply for a maximum of $150,000 per year, or is that a lifetime maximum of the grant?
At this time, employers do apply once a year. We release the request for proposal in the spring. We award kind of at the end of spring. We set up in June, or like set up through the summer, and then the grant operates through like that fall, spring, following summer period. An applicant is applying for $150,000 for the grant period, just for that 1 year. There is no grantee maximum. So an employer could participate in this grant for 5 years, 10 years. There's no maximum there. So yes, so the 150,000 is not a lifetime amount.
Great. And I'll just also jump in that the related instruction inventory on the Department of Labor and Industry website, we do have some non-state of Minnesota programs that are listed that employers have used in the past. So not a big number, but we do have some of those listed too.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's move into the competitive priorities for this grant program. So the main competitive priority for this grant program is to ensure that any trainees that are continuing their education programs are able to secure funding to finish those programs. A good example would be a licensed practical nurse. They take 1 year on the grant. Their employer decides to apply again. We want to make sure we can get that second year for that licensed practical nurse funded again. So we are going to be looking at that as a priority. If you are an employer, you may have some trainees that are continuing and some trainees that are not. You need to be really clear and make sure that amount is listed in the proposal screens, so we know exactly how many are going to be continuing from previous dual training grant rounds. And then to the extent possible, the Office of Higher Ed does try to balance those awards at the end among the various locations, whether those locations are within or outside the metropolitan area, trying to balance those awards among the industries themselves, the 7 industries, and trying to balance it among employer size. And we'd look at the big employer versus the large employer based upon that $25 million threshold. If it comes to a situation where an applicant is awarded this grant based upon one of these competitive priorities only, then they are going to be restricted in the trainees that they can provide in their program. So if they apply for 10 trainees, 5 are continuing, 5 are brand new, they're awarded only for their 5 continuing, then only continuing dual trainees can be part of their grant. For collaboration, with collaborating with this, of course, our organizations who are representing their employer partners need to be collaborating. So we want to make sure that collaboration is happening. And then also the applicants are welcome to collaborate with their related instruction training providers. Ultimately, though, the applicant themselves, whether it's the employer or the organization, needs to actually be applying. With our grant portal system that we have, employer partners and training providers at this time do not have a role in the system at this moment, so they cannot create a user account and come and see the employer's application. Therefore, there will need to be collaboration happening where the employers have access to the portal system, are putting in that information and are setting up, meetings and check-ins with their employer partners or with their training providers and making sure that the content in the proposal is accurate before submitting. Selection criteria. Okay. The selection criteria for this program. This is definitely detailed in the request for proposal. I wanted to re-put it on the different screens here in the slides. For the selection criteria, this is really where your narrative proposal piece is, and this is what's going to be getting evaluated by your grant reviewers. And so you want to make sure you're really thorough with discussing these different areas. I am not going to go through all the details on the slides because I would rather do that in the portal piece. So I'll just touch on the main parts. So you're going to talk about dual training program being robust and complete. That is 50 points. You are going to talk about recruiting, training, retaining trainees for recent high school graduates. That's 10 points. You're going to talk about recruiting, training, retaining trainees who are employees of color, American Indian, or employees with disabilities. That's 10 points. You're going to talk about the costs of related instruction and how that's minimized. Then you're going to discuss additional employment opportunities for your trainees, and then provide an overview of the projected increases in compensation because of the dual training program. That's another 10 points. The way the selection process happens is a review committee goes ahead and evaluates those proposal narratives, and then they are all organized first on the competitive priorities. Awards are going to be given to those applicants who have continuing dual training populations. Then we're going to be organizing those proposals based upon the evaluations, which is a 100-point scale, and we are going to be awarding from the highest to the lowest till all the funds are expended. Then we're going to reorganize those applications, and to the extent possible, we are going to balance those awards among the locations, the industries, and the sizes, and then we'll re-put them back in the order of their proposal evaluations, and any of the remaining applicants will not be awarded. Once the Office of Higher Education announces these awards, then all applicants will be receiving copies of their evaluation records, so you will know the score that you received and any comments or feedback from our review committee. With the selection process, this is just kind of that timeline. The applicants will be notified May 31st. All applicants will be notified, whether you're getting an award or not getting an award. Then the grantees will be publicly announced online and through a press release on June 10th. There will be a mandatory orientation for all of those that move to the grantee stage on June 10th. Please mark your calendars now for that. And then you will, through the months of June and July, prepare grant documents and sign a contract in August. We are going to take, this isn't very long, but let's take like a 6-minute break or so. Just to run to the bathroom, go grab a drink of water, all those fun things. And then we are going to come back and we are going to go into the actual portal. So I'm going to show you where to register, and I'm going to walk you through the different screens and all the parts that you need to get into that portal system. Hello, welcome back. Okay, we did our quick little 6-minute break. Thank you. I needed to just get a drink of water. Let's get into the portal so I can actually show you how you are going to apply for the dual training grant.
Jacqueline, I have one. Do you mind if I ask one question in the chat?
Absolutely. I'll work on sharing the screen and you ask away.
Sure. Would education start dates of July be too early?
Maybe potentially. It'll kind of depend. Let me get this page up really quick and then I will elaborate a bit more. So signing a grant contract does have to be fully effective, and all parties, like OHE signs first, then the grantee signs, and then OHE does a final signature. And all those signatures have to be like completely dry, and the effective date on the contract needs to have happened. And logistically, that is not going to usually happen in June. That step is going to happen as early as July. So maybe if the course, started that 3rd week or that 4th week in July, we could definitely do our very best to have that, but I wouldn't guarantee that. We definitely will have everything done and signed and prepared for the end of August start dates, which is a majority of our Minnesota State colleges and universities, and we'll do our very best to accommodate or get things started earlier for those that might start earlier. Okay, dual training grant. Just to remind everybody, you're going to go to the Office of Higher Education's website, and it is a competitive grant, and that is where you're going to find everything dual training grant related. And then I want to just put a second reminder out there because I know I have received a few emails about it, but under the dual training grant, there are 2 pages. One is dual training provider directory and one is frequently asked questions. Those pages are not going to be operational throughout this entire period. Right now, when you go and click on them, they might have a variety of language on it, but we are working to get it updated to be uniform language to say that this page is not in operation. So please don't go to either of those 2 pages. And we are aware that the language on there isn't aligning at this time. Where I want you to go for the request for proposal is the actual request for proposal page. And again, please click on this dual training grant request for proposal document. We want you reading this very, very thoroughly. You need to read through all of it with the details and let me know if there's any additional technical questions by April 9th. And then on our website, before I get into the portal, I'm going to point out a couple other areas. So we have a section here for additional resources. The first additional resource is these eligible related instruction training providers. This differs from the training provider inventory. You click on here and you are going to see training providers and some different information about them. These training providers are pre-populated, predetermined, already in the portal system for you. If you are an employer who sees that your training provider is not on this list, there will be additional steps to take. And that first step is going to be sending me a direct email with the link to the training provider and very, very clear links to the exact programs, the degree certificates or credentials that they are going to be earning that are embedded within those pages. And you got to be very clear about the training provider and the program, and you're going to send that to me and we'll have to start going through the review process. It might be very quick if it is one of those SARA schools that I talked about that are out of state, college and universities. It might be very quick. It might be, I look at it, we can get it added to the portal very quickly. It might be something that's different and needs to actually go through an exemption application process with Kate in our licensing, and that will take additional time. But you can start with sending me the email, and until that training provider is embedded in that portal for you to select from, you won't be able to select them. So we have to get through those steps. So take a quick look at this list, and if you already know that yours is not on there, send that email so we can work on the next steps of getting it put into the portal. The second resource I want to point out is this manual for applicants. At this time, it's not in a fully accessible format. Our communications team is working on that. So if you need the accessible version more quickly, please definitely email us. That is on the website on who to email. But for right now, this is a great manual for potential applicants, for grantees, on how to navigate this portal system. And so if you have some of those basic questions, you should be able to navigate this manual and find those answers. Let's go into the actual portal itself. We have the link right here on the page for you, and you will click on there. And this is what that page is going to look like for you. This is how it'll look. If you are a brand new user, you're going to go down and you're going to click new user, and you will see a screen that new user registration is going to pop up. You're going to populate this, and you're going to hit that register button. When you hit that register button, a box will pop up and say that it is being reviewed, and it will give a time frame of 3 business days. That is because your registration comes directly to me and I review it. I need to make sure I am assigning and creating the proper organization and the proper roles for the individuals who need access to that organization. And therefore, I have to review those pieces before I can approve those users. So 3 business days is currently what we are operating at. I have been approving users since Tuesday, and I did approve users all the way up until we started this workshop. So if you've already submitted a new user registration, you should have gotten an email confirmation it was approved. You should be able to log in. Upon that very first login, you're gonna be able to update your password, edit your profile, make sure address and all those pieces are built in there appropriately. For demoing today, this is our production site, so this is what is live. I am not going to be demoing in that site. Instead, I am going to be demoing in our testing site for you, and I am going to log into the site as if I am the grantee. So I am somebody who's going to be applying for the dual training grant. Hold on, I just have to refresh. There we go. Once in a great while, they'll do that little error message for me on testing, but not a problem. Okay, this will be your dashboard. So when you log in for the first time, you're going to see 3 main categories. You're going to see my tasks, my opportunities, and my announcements. At this time, we do not have any announcements out there for you. Under my opportunities, you will see 1 opportunity. That is the dual training grant proposal. Under tasks, you will see those tasks coming for you, like popping up and being added as you move through the proposal process, as you move through the review process and forward into being a grantee. So those will be the items that you'll give attention to. Let's begin and say that we are starting a brand new proposal. This just gives you some information. The dates on here, because I'm in testing, are not accurate, but on the production live site, you will actually see March 12th through the April 22nd timeline, and the due date of April 22nd, 11:59 p.m. So you'll see all those accurate dates when you log in. We'll click agree. You will be brought to this landing page for the proposal. On this landing page, this is direct language that's also available on the website. We just wanted to, re-put in these steps and the things that you're going to need to be thinking about. You need to read that request for proposal. Make sure you're consulting with the pipeline team and Kathleen's team to make sure everything's in order. If you have any additional questions, make sure you've established those partnerships with your training provider, and make sure you have a dual training program with an eligible occupation. And then you're going to go through the steps of submitting everything through the portal. We're going to go through all the different screens. They are going to be the proposal information, training provider criteria, training provider selection, proposal narrative, and financial and applicant capacity review. We're going to go through all of those pieces. And then the very last step is you're going to receive notification from our agency about award decisions at the end of May. We'll click on proposal information. Proposal information is the area where you are providing the basics, kind of the foundation of who you are as an organization. Some pieces throughout this proposal process are going to pre-populate for you, and there's going to be a variety of air checking and making sure everything's complete before you move forward. So make sure we're always mindful of those pieces. Navigation-wise, at the very top right, you're going to see a save button. I think it's a great idea that as you're going through each screen, you're saving. Because as you're saving, it's going to automatically be telling you or highlighting in red and dropping down messages, oh, you forgot this step. So it's great to continue to save it throughout. And you can always come in and out of this portal, like as you wish. It will all save in here. So you can come in and out and start things, confirm things, come back in. The applicant name is going to pull directly from the organization that I have assigned you to. You are going to let us know when your dual training program start date is. Some of these fields are going to pop up with an extra little gray box to give a little bit more context. So for this one, it's going to say enter the date in which dual trainees will begin related instruction coursework and on-the-job training. This is actually set up to not allow you to select anything prior to July 1st. Because we know that we can't get a contract signed in the month of June. So let's just say it's going to start July 31st. The address, city, state, zip, all of that, again, is pulling from the actual organization's profile. You're going to let us know if you're going to be paying that 25% match. If you say yes, wonderful, let's move forward. If you say no, because we're a smaller organization, this box of financial document upload is going to appear. I am going to attach a test document to it. And what I need for that financial document upload is I need financial records and documentation from like your official accounting kind of side of the house that shows the calendar year. And I'm very specific about calendar year. This is January 1st of 2023 through December 31st of 2023. This is not maybe a fiscal year or an audit year. This is calendar year. So sometimes companies have to piece this together for me, but we need to see that the annual gross revenue, so before anything is taken out, is underneath that 25 million threshold. And so that's the financial document you are uploading here for me to review. You're going to let us know if you are an employer. Your employer, great. If you're an organization of employers, this is where that employer partner piece comes into play. And you will need to let us know the employer's partner's name, street address, and their contact information. So we have this information. Over on the far right, you're going to see a little plus sign. You can hit that plus sign because maybe you're partnering with 5 employers. So you can hit the plus sign 5 times and put in all the information for all 5 employers. You are estimating right now the number of dual trainees. Dual trainees does not necessarily like lock in. So this can fluctuate throughout your grant period. We, often see, programs cost less, so they're able to get more trainees, or maybe a program costs more, so it's less trainees. So that can be in flux, but we do need to have a good estimate of what your plans are for training for the year. So let's say 10. And then of the estimated trainees, how many are continuing their related instruction program from a previous grant round? Let's say 3 are continuing. And again, this is super important. If you know that they're going to be continuing, you have to get them in here. If the grant closes on April 22nd and then you're like, oh no, my employee from 2-3 years ago now wants to come back in, there's no priority for them. If you want your individual to be continuing their education, you need to know it up front and let us know, because this will impact our awarding process. And then these, we're going to talk about the actual breakdown for amounts. So we need to know your total amount for related instruction and your total amount for trainee support. And again, if you hover above these boxes, it's going to give you just a little bit more direction. This is for tuition, fees, books, materials. So we have 10. I'm just going to say everybody's going to use 6,000. So we'll do a full 60,000. And then when you hover over the trainee supports, again, provides all of those different areas tied back to related instruction. I'm going to request the full amount. So we're going to do 6,000, and the total amount will calculate for you at 66,000. This name of the applicant contact. So this is going to be that person that I can reach out to with like all of my main communication. I'm just going to populate this. If I have any questions about this, you will be the individual receiving that email information. And then sometimes that applicant contact is at a completely different location than the actual organization under the profile that is pulling in. So we want to make sure we have that information. At the bottom of a proposal information, and this would be a great thing as soon as your user registration is approved, to go to this screen and make sure this piece is accurate, because this piece at the very bottom is actually going to impact different screens as you move throughout. So applicant type of organization, and I am assigning these, and this one is set up as a business entity. If I am easily able to find if you're a business, nonprofit, political subdivision, those pieces, it should be accurate. If I can't easily identify it, I may reach out to you. But if this is wrong, let me know right away, because I want to get it changed on my side so then your screens are appearing correctly. We'll move to the next form here. If you go back on that left menu bar for proposal information, you can see a check is in there. That means you've completed everything accurately, uploaded what was necessary, and there's no error messages that are happening. So great, we can move forward to our next screens. We're going to move into the area of selecting your training provider. Typically, when a competitive grant is awarded to a grantee and they're given X amount of funding, and they sign a contract, they have to go through contracting, like bidding process, to bid for different services or supplies, and that happens usually afterwards. This grant is different, and therefore that is why this type of a bidding process for your training providers is happening now at the time of proposal. So the next couple screens and documents you are going to do are focused on your training providers and those partnerships. With this screen, what you are going to do is you are going to start by letting us know what is that criteria that's really important for you as an employer that your training provider has. Maybe you're really focused on the location of where they are. Maybe you really are focused on the cost or that degree level. So you can write this out paragraph and give us some more details. You can list it, whatever works for you, but give us a sense of what you're looking for in your training providers. Then you are going to be providing those quotes or bids or those check-ins you're having with those training providers. That's going to help you decide on who you actually want as a training provider. This entire process is required of all applicants. There's no exemptions at all. All applicants do need to go through this. Applicants at minimum need to be seeking out quotes or bids from a minimum of 3 training providers altogether. So if you are an applicant who has 10 occupations you're applying for, it might be pretty easy to have enough training providers in here. If you're an applicant who's only applying for 1 occupation, you might have a little additional work in making sure you get the 3 bids or training providers put in here. There are several lists that the state of Minnesota targets, and so we have those links embedded here. Again, all this is in the request for proposal as well. If you select from one of these lists, if your training provider is in one of these lists, you don't have to do the extra work of actually getting the quote and meeting with them and pulling that information. Instead, you can just select them from the list and let us know. So that is one of the great things about that targeted list. But if the training provider is not on that targeted list, then we have a couple more pieces that you do need to be doing. So let's start here. We have our training provider. I'm just going to do College A. I'm going to say that they are not on my targeted list. I'm going to say, yep, this one does meet the criteria that I listed above. I'm going to say I was working with them in email. I got a quote on March 29th. And then if I just had additional notes about it, you know, great location, you know, cost is more, any type of notes that would help give us a good idea of that training provider you can enter in there. Then you're gonna move down to your second one. We're gonna do, this one will also be, we'll say College B, they're not a targeted vendor. We're gonna say they're not meeting the actual requirements of there. And I actually had an in-person meeting with them, and I met with them on the 27th. And then your very last one, and this is minimum, your last one, we'll just say it was a private provider. They were on that targeted list, and they met that criteria. And then if you need to add more, you can go ahead and click that plus button, scroll down, and you're going to see the next one. So we'll also say we have just another private company, and they were on the targeted list and they did not meet the criteria we were looking for. We need to make sure at least 2 people within your organization are reviewing all these training providers. You're talking about it, you're having these conversations, you're making a decision on who you're going to actually move forward with. So we need to know their name and their title. I'm just putting in things. And then again, I always like to, we'll just save before we move to that next form, make sure I didn't miss anything. Perfect. And then we are going to move to the next form. Okay. This screen, these are the training providers you've actually selected. These are the ones that you want to use. And this is where the list I talked about on the website that has the actual training providers listed for you, that is where this is pulling from. So if it's not on the list, you're not going to see them in this drop down. And that means you got to get in contact with me because we have to figure out if they're eligible. And if they are, then I will get them put into the system for you to select from. Right now, again, we're in testing mode. I only have a couple of these built out. So we're just going to select Anoka Ramsey. That one I'd already built out. We're going to select our industry. So we're advanced manufacturing, let's say, and we'll just do machinist here. And then I'm going to save it. After I save Anoka Ramsey, I'm going to come up to this top right and I'm clicking this add button because I have 2 training providers I'm going to select, we'll say. And my next training provider, let's just do Bemidji. We're just going to do manufacturing again. Let's do manufacturing engineer, and I'm going to click save. Okay, what has happened? You're going to go back over to your left menu bar, and you're going to click on training provider selection. And you can see Anoka Ramsey and Bemidji State, they kind of bump out into this really great list format for you. You will see then all your training providers in here. This step is crucial. This is the step that if you become a grantee, we are pulling this data forward into the next type of screens that are going to be appearing. So you need to make sure that they are all listed in here, and training providers cannot be added. So they cannot be added in here after April 22nd. This is where we're really pulling that from. So anything added in here is what is going to move forward. Let's move to that next form. Okay, one more step for training providers. I know there's several steps for training providers. I appreciate your patience with these steps, and we will be like cross-checking all of these steps to make sure everything is aligning well. Just try to double check it on your side too before you're submitting it. Here's the next step. I actually need to know your very specific programs that you are going to be sending your trainees to. That happens right now in this application period. So we are going to click this link to download a templated spreadsheet for you. In this template, you are gonna, now this part isn't gonna pull forward, so we need to edit a copy. Now, oh, I don't want to sign in. Okay, I'm not gonna walk you through it because on the browser, I'd have to download the whole thing onto my desktop, save it, and then walk you through it. But you're going to actually list your training providers. You're going to type in Anoka Ramsey, the whole name. Then under industry, you are going to be able, it will be embedded in here where you can select advanced manufacturing. So then when you move to occupation, you're only going to see the occupations for advanced manufacturing, and you're going to pick those out. Then you're going to actually give us the title of that degree, certificate, or credential. And I mean like the full title. Make sure it's exactly that. If I go to the website, I want to find it with that exact language. And then the type, and this will actually drop down with some options to let us know if it's an academic diploma or if it's an industry certification. It is going to have a drop down in there for you. And lastly, we want that website. I do not want the homepage of the college. I want the exact link to go and look at what courses that are part of that degree. So if it is a diploma program, this link should get me exactly to that diploma page where I can easily know every course, every credit that's associated with. Now, I know with some of the industry credential certifications, some of those pages are going to be a little bit more difficult on how they navigate. But we want to make sure that we can easily have access to this, because our review committee is going to be looking at this. They look at your proposal narrative and they compare it to this to make sure they know exactly what they're looking at, and they have a good understanding of your programming. And because we're getting down into the details of the exact degree, certificate, or credential, and the exact type, I want you to know that we do see variations in this after the April 22nd deadline. So we'll see like a trainee come into the program. They want to do the associates as a machinist instead of the diploma as a machinist. That's fine. The occupation remained the same. The training provider remained the same. You're just flexing the type of degree, certificate, or credential, but it's all within that same scope. That's okay that variation is going to be happening. So you'll go ahead, you're going to create that PDF or that Excel spreadsheet for me, and then you're going to upload it into here. So I'm going to not upload it, and then when we save, it should air out for us to see that piece. This is that proposal narrative where you are being evaluated on your responses. In the proposal narrative, you are going to look at your dual training programs as a whole. You are in the past, you would answer all of these areas for each occupation, and instead you're just going to be answering all these areas once. And in those answers, you're going to be embedding occupation specific information into it. And there are text boxes for you then to outline this information. If you're doing a lot of collaboration on your application, this may be a good area where you are writing this out in a Word document and copying and pasting it in. That would be maybe a good way to collaborate with the other entities to make sure it's all accurate before you put it into this format. So for the very first one, we want to make sure, this is where half of the points are. We really want to make sure that this is a robust and complete dual training program. So this is the area that you are going to talk about your related instruction for each of your occupations and how it ties into the pyramids and those competencies, the skills that they should be learning in related instruction. At the same time, you're going to be talking about their on-the-job training and then how those skills are happening as well. We want to make sure that there's a correlation between the two. So during this grant period, our trainees in this occupation are going to be learning these types of skills. And then during that same year, at the same time, we are planning to have these type of skills learned through on-the-job training. We really need to make sure that it is resulting in those trainees earning those industry degree certificates and credentials in a timely fashion. So you're going to want to make a note or a paragraph about your plans for that. So a reviewer can see all the programs that you're going to have your trainees in, but they need to, let them know, hey, it's going to be completed within 1 year, 2 years, so they can make sure it's completed within a timely fashion. And then the applicant, you are going to be wanting to talk about in here and validating that you have procedures in place to track a dual training program and evaluate the progress of your dual trainees. And then you are going, I'm going to put some words in here so it doesn't air out. And then you're going to upload your on-the-job training plan. So in the earlier part, first part of the presentation, I was talking about that on-the-job training plan. We are not providing like a sound example for you to use. Like you can only use this template for OJT because we know that our grantees vary on how they set up their on-the-job training plans. And so you can upload table, chart, graph. We just need to make sure there's an on-the-job training plan for each occupation that you're applying for. If you apply for one occupation, we'll see one upload. If you're applying for 3, we'll see 3 uploads. Make sure they're labeled appropriately when you do your uploads, and make sure that they are at least touching on one of those common types of on-the-job training. I'm just going to select a document here. Then in this area, you're going to talk about you as the applicant, as the employer, your ability to recruit, train, and retain dual trainees who are recent high school graduates or who recently passed their high school equivalency test. So this is going to be looking at anybody who is going to be recently graduating here in 2024. And if they've recently graduated or earned that GED, you're going to talk about what those measures are as an organization that you have implemented in order to recruit, train, and retain them. And then you're gonna kind of similarly, you're gonna talk about then the recruiting, training, and retaining of those employees of color, American Indian, and those with disabilities. And you're gonna talk through that in this area. You're going to explain the mechanisms and resources that are available to your dual trainees to minimize the out-of-pocket costs of related instruction. We are just honing in on related instruction, tuition fees, books, and materials. This area, depending upon your program, it could be with the funding of the dual training grant, all tuition fees, books, and materials will be covered for all of our dual trainees. Or it could be some of your trainees. There might be programs where your dual trainees are going to be seeking federal and state financial aid programs. It might be where some of your dual trainees, you as the employer, are going to go above and beyond and just make sure it's covered no matter the cost. You might be connecting them with an outside scholarship program or foundation that's going to help cover those costs. But we really want to know what is going to be happening to keep the out-of-pocket cost for your dual trainees at a minimum. You're going to list and elaborate on the additional employment opportunities your dual trainees are going to have as a result of this dual training program. So if they're moving, kind of from one type of a occupation level to another occupational level, if this would open up those pathways for them in the future, you're going to discuss it here. And then you do want to outline your projected increase in compensation. It's not a requirement to have an increase in compensation because of the dual training grant, but we do need to know and outline the projected increase because you do get scored on it in your proposal narrative. So this is an area where we see, different variations of wage levels and how they might move within the grant period and outside the grant period among those compensation pieces. You're also welcome to go ahead and talk about any other type of compensation outside of wages that they may receive. I'm gonna put some words in these and then I'll show you how it's gonna air out so we can look at that. And then at the very, very end is additional documents. This part is not required, but let's say you just have a really good flow chart or a good example of the wage progression and you'd rather show that in the imaging that you already have established, you can go ahead and upload those additional documents for us. So then the grant review committee can view those in addition to all of the language you've put in here. Let's go ahead and save. And as you can see, a bar popped up saying, attention, OJT plan is required, and please fill out all the fields in the narrative section. And then if you look over on the left-hand menu side, you're gonna see an exclamation mark. We have check marks before because we've been doing a good job not having any errors, but now we have an error and it's gonna do that exclamation mark on there. So let's go back up. And it highlighted the box red. Fantastic. Let's put a test document in there. Let's go down to that last box I didn't complete before. Perfect. Let's resave. Awesome. We got our check mark and I can move over to my next form. Okay. Financial and applicant capacity review. Parts of this process were already were established for like nonprofit organizations in previous grant rounds. This year, this applies to all of our nonprofits, all of our business entities. There's a couple parts that are for our political subdivisions. It does not apply to anybody under the state of Minnesota, and it does not apply to the tribal sovereign nations. And on that very first screen that we talked about proposal information, this is why how your organization is classified is important, because this screen will adjust based upon that. So let's go through this, and I'm a business entity, and the business entity is going to have almost all of the points that a nonprofit is going to have. So I'm just going to show you the business entity. If you're nonprofit, definitely go look at this screen to refamiliarize yourself with it. At the very beginning, what you are doing here is you are letting us know about your history in performing this type of work, in performing a dual training program, and potentially having other grants, or just having grants in general. So you're letting us know about your staffing, organization structure, and your budget. We really want to look at the capacity of your organization in administering a grant program like this. We want to know if you have been awarded or have an active grant from the Minnesota Office of Higher Ed in the last 5 years. So let's say, yes, I participated last year. We're going to say dual training grant. We're going to go over to our fiscal years, and we're going to say I currently have one that's operating from 2023 through 2024. And then, has the applicant been awarded or have an active grant from another state agency? So maybe you have a grant that you're holding through DEED or MDE or another agency. We do need to know about those as well. In this instance, we'll say no. If I say yes, it's going to do the same thing. Pop down, let us know. Then we need to do a certification of no felony financial crimes. You'll read through this language and make sure nobody's been convicted of a felony financial crime in the last 10 years, your organization, and you're going to go ahead and be signing that. And your signature is telling us that you are affirming that. In addition to, you need to upload your organizational chart or a list of those principles in order to certify that all of you do not have those felony financial crimes in the last 10 years. And it is financial. I will point that part out. We're really honing in on the financial piece. And then lastly, for the capacity side of things, we need to know that your certification of good standing with the Secretary of State, you're just letting us know yes or no. We do double check this. With our political subdivisions that may be applying, the only piece on here you are going to be required to provide is the no felony financial crime piece. That is it. And that is completely it on this screen for you. Then we're going to move into the financial review. Again, business and nonprofit, slightly different, but very similar. With this, it is going to be, we really need to either be, it depends on how much money you're requesting from the grant, and then that's going to determine how many years of financial documents we need. If you are requesting less than $50,000, we are going to look at the last completed year that you've completed with your financial stuff. If you're a business, this would be the last year that you filed taxes. If you're a nonprofit, it's probably going to be the last year you did a certified audit. If you are requesting $50,000 or higher, we do need 3 years. Most recent, again, so businesses, most recent tax filings, nonprofit is going to be most recent audits. You'll go ahead and you'll check a box if you're requesting more than $50,000. How this works on production is once you check that box, it'll drop down to 3. If you don't check the box, you're just going to see the 1. And then you will go ahead and you're going to let us know. So let's just say this is 2022 taxes. And we'll do 2021 taxes. And we're going to do 2020 taxes. And you'll upload a document for each of those years for us. And then if you're not a business long enough to have tax returns, in this area, you are going to be describing those internal controls for us instead. If you have supporting documents to show those internal controls, you'll upload those then instead of those tax documents. And then if you have any liens on assets for our businesses, you'll describe them here. And our businesses do need to check off that they're not in any bankruptcy proceedings. Let's save this and make sure everything's saved appropriately. Good. And we got a check mark. Fantastic. And then at the very bottom, we are going to hit Save and Submit Application. You'll just click OK. And you're done. There, it is submitted and it is done. If upon submission or after submission, but before the April 22nd deadline, you need to make changes or edits, you are going to need to reach out to me directly, and I will have to work with our portal software developers in order to determine kind of next steps and how we can get things edited for you. So if there's something you have to change, definitely let us know. I'm sure there are questions, and we have 10 minutes left, and I do have a couple more closing items, so we can take a couple minutes now to talk through these pages and then finish up in the PowerPoint.
Jacqueline, do you want to know any of the questions yet?
Yes,
go for it. Okay, so one is, what is a FEIN? And if we have two different FEINs, would we apply for two different grants?
That's your federal tax ID number, and we have to have that on the contract. That's why it's being asked for. And having multiple FEINs does not mean it's multiple applications or multiple entities, because very often you'll have one entity, one organization with multiple different kind of those subdivisions with different federal tax ID numbers. So that is not the case. You have to decide which federal tax ID number is going to be associated with a contract, and it needs to be associated with how the payment process happens. So if you have like a corporate level entity and maybe it's out of state, you need to know theirs, because that is how the contract is going to get tied. You can't set up a contract where the FEIN belongs over here, but then the payment is going to go there and then the address is somewhere else. You have to decide as the largest level organization at the very top where all of that is going to fall.
Okay, and then on the portal login, do we need to go through our organization's AO, or can we just register as a new user? I'm not sure what AO.
Yep, that's our authorized officials, our grantee authorized officials. So when you register as a new user, you're just going to register as a new user, and I'll assign your role. At this point, I am assigning all roles to be grantee authorized officials. Later in the process or becoming a grantee, you'll start to see other roles being assigned to users, like a grantee financial person or a grantee reporter. So there will be other roles as you move through the process as a grantee, but at this time, the grantee authorized official is being assigned to it. I assign that for you, and then you'll be the one having access to this application and submitting it.
Okay, for employee organizations, do we put in estimates for the whole cohort or for an estimate for each employer partner?
If we're talking about amounts of money, that is you as the organization. That's your overall amount. If we're talking about number of grant dual trainees, again, that's as an organization, that's the overall amount. Where you're breaking down your employer partner is just letting us know who they are at this time. If you are granted an award, and let's say you're given 150,000 and you're going to train 20 dual trainees, then you will decide on how that breaks down among employer partners at a later date.
Great. What percentage of properly completed applications get a grant?
It's a good question. It's a bit difficult to answer for this year. I can tell you historically over the last 3 years, we have been awarding around $3 million and we have been denying around $1 million. If all of the applicants last year applied and we had the 5 million like we do this year, everybody would have been awarded full requesting amounts as long as they met all the criteria. So this year we have 3 new industries, multiple new occupations, but we also have more money. So it is really tough to answer that question for this specific year. We're just very hopeful that it will cover most of them and that we don't have to be denying large amounts.
If our training provider is a college, do we just put in the cost per credit or cost per program?
We really want to be looking, you can enter information about both when you're going through those screens, but we do really want to be mindful of what it's going to cost for this year. So when you get into the proposal narrative screens and you're talking about minimizing cost for dual trainees, you really want to focus on this year. But when you're going through the screens about your training provider criteria and selecting them, it's a great idea to be putting down, this is what the overall 2-year program costs. This year, it will cost about this. Second year will cost about that. So having that breakdown as you're going through that selection process is good information.
Can we also utilize all 3 training providers as well in bid and for the grant?
Yes, absolutely. The training provider criteria screens is really to who have you, everybody you've checked in with, right? Then when you move to your selection, you can select all of them or not select all of them. That's up to you. But on that selection screen is really who you have definitively are moving forward with.
Do you know what ICAT is? ICATT? I think
Yeah,
it's something manufacturing, but I'm not positive. Timothy Blazer, do you want to go off mute and say anything about that or? Okay, I'll go on to the next one. Would a college show up on the targeted vendor website?
It's probably not going to be on there. Most of them you're going to have to be checking with. The ones that you're going to see on there more often than not are going to be your private education companies that are either licensed with us or have a certificate of exemption. And with our certificate of exemption ones that have all already been built into that training provider selection screen, it's going to let you know when you select them when their certificate of exemption expires. They're only good for so many years. So just be mindful of when that expiration date is going to happen, because you might need to talk with them right now and say, hey, you need to renew that so it stays valid throughout the grant period.
Okay, what about the courses that are prerequisite for degree courses? They are not typically listed on training partner sites, i.e. a math class needed before one required in a degree due to lower test scores or transcript.
So the grant will help cover required, like underline required, prerequisites for that individual for their program. It does have to be in writing, and it should be. We see this a lot in healthcare, nursing, but you go to those nursing pages and I can easily pull up a PDF where it says, you know, this, and this required before moving forward. So those words required are important and it does have to be documented. It cannot be something where you think it's required or think it's recommended and you do it and there's no documentation behind it.
If we use a college for more than one occupation, example, machinist and mechatronics, do we need to choose the college just once or do we need to choose the college for each occupation?
Oh, yes. Okay, I don't know if I can go back into this. Hold on. 1 second. Okay, so when I choose my training provider, I'm choosing my training provider once, but I can choose multiple occupations within that. And then I can use this add button to create if I'm in multiple industries. So let's say I'm using Anoka Ramsey for 3 occupations in advanced manufacturing. I'm using Anoka Ramsey, let's say for information technology, for a cloud architect. And I'm saving that and confirming. So you can build out your training provider selection for those multiple different pieces in here. And you can add to it so we're only doing the training provider once, and then you're putting everything under there.
Jacqueline, you're going to want to hit save, not add. You're not saving it.
Okay, thank you, Katie.
You're welcome. So just you kept hitting add, first hit save, and then hit add.
Perfect. I want to show you what this looks like. Save. See, I said save was important and then I didn't do it, but yes, saving is important. Let's grab another one. I don't even know who I chose before, but save. Perfect. And then it pops up. Go back to Bemidji. I can go back and look at Bemidji's and everything that I selected. Perfect. Okay, that should answer that question then. Training provider selected once, but then under training provider, multiple industries, multiple occupations selected.
What if someone were to change programs, meaning they begin in a college and switch to a certificate? Can they do that?
So you're switching your programs, you're in the, yes. So like you start with an associate's, you want to go back to the diploma, you start with a diploma, you want to go into the associates. That flexibility is in there. If they're saying leaving college A and I'm completely going to college B and college B was never on your proposal, that can't happen. If they say, I am no longer going to be a dental hygienist, I'm going to be a dentist instead, and I need to switch occupations and dentist was not on your proposal, they can no longer participate. So we have to be staying in our industries, our occupations, our training providers, little bit of flexibility with the actual specific degree as long as it's within the scope.
Okay, Maggie asks, is that area where we put information for all the roles we are submitting for? I'm not sure what area she was talking about, but
training provider selection, it's coming in two areas. It's coming right here. You're letting us know all occupations you are applying for. And then in proposal narrative, where you're uploading your document, where it's getting way more detailed about your programming, you're uploading it in there. But training provider selection is the one we really, really want to focus on to make sure every occupation is in there.
okay, we are looking at adding an occupation for machine maintenance. Can the dual trainee be based at one location but assist at another if needed and if travel is paid? I think they're talking about the support costs or something.
As far as your locations, again, your trainees permanent work location where they physically attend on a regular basis needs to be in Minnesota. So if they need to be traveling between some of your work sites, that's fine. But if they're predominantly based in a Wisconsin site and they just happen to travel into Minnesota for one of your locations on an occasional basis, they're not going to be eligible. And then the trainee supports, when I talk about travel, this is only travel for their formal coursework. It is not any travel with on-the-job training. It's no travel for job. It is just to get them from point A to their training coursework, and back, of course. But and there's more details in the request for proposal about that.
Dave asks, why are the 3 years of tax records required now?
Yes. So the state of Minnesota as an enterprise on the legislative level did change rules and requirements that govern grants, whether it's competitive grant, legislatively named grant, any of those kinds. And they changed those laws in the 2023 legislative session. It gave the Office of Grants Management more oversight of how these grants are administered. Now, if you go into the Office of Grants Management, you will notice that the 3 years piece is not in there. The 1 year piece is. the Office of Higher Education, we are one of the agencies in the state of Minnesota that has a lot more requirements on us, particularly because of our Minnesota self-loan program. So our audit teams that come into our agency have a lot more requirements of us. Therefore, the Office of Higher So it's two-part. Office of Grants Management now requires this of all business entities, all nonprofits, and they have a lot more built out in there, right? And then in addition to the Office of Higher Education moves from 1 year all the way up to 3 years because of additional requirements that our agency has.
Is there a way to get the list of other documents required before starting the process?
I don't know what you mean by the other documents. You can go into this portal and you can move between these screens very easily, and you don't have to complete one screen to move to the next. So you can go in here and determine all of the pieces that are needed in here. There is not a document that's been created that's like a checklist with all of the items that you'll need to do, and it'll depend on you too as an applicant on whether some of these pieces are or aren't required. But I will say the request for proposal, again, go back to that. It has all of these fields, all of these modules you see in this portal, all these fields, all of these questions, they are all in that request for proposal. So if you wanted to go to those pages and go through each of them and just highlight, oh, there's a document upload, I need to do that, because it is all detailed in that request for proposal.
Can you save as you go without submitting?
Yes, absolutely. Continue to hit that save button, come in and out of the portal as many times as you want, and then go ahead and submit.
Can you expand on financial statements required? And Jacqueline, I have to hop off for another call, but
I can facilitate them.
okay, great.
Thanks, Madeline.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, everybody, that we're going a bit over, but I do want to have the importance of answering these questions. And again, we'll record. So if you need to leave, you're more than welcome to. We'll get this recording up by the end of next week. Madeline, what was the question again?
Can you expand on financial statements required? And if that's also in the RFP on the website, that might be helpful.
Yes, everything is detailed in the request for proposal. There's different areas for financial pieces, so I don't know exactly which part you're referring to. However, we'll just touch base on both of them. Let's say you are in the proposal information and you are a smaller company and you're not going to be contributing towards the match. This financial document upload, it is financial records showing annual gross revenue. We are focusing on that exact language, and we are focusing in on the exact dates of January 1 through December 31 of 2023. So most often companies will go in like profit and loss type of statements that they'll pull from their systems. They'll highlight those areas, they'll highlight the dates, they'll have a manager sign off on it in the accounting area. Those are the kind of documents that end up getting uploaded to this area. For financial and applicant capacity review sections, you are really, as a business entity, going to be focusing on tax returns and federal and state tax returns. It's only if you don't have those because you haven't been in business long enough that we're going to need some more information and additional documentation to kind of back that up.
Can you speak more to the information in the RFP that is listed under the FAFSA requirement? For example, if someone is going to school for nursing, which will definitely cost more than the $6,000, and they're taking out loans, is that a situation where we would need to contact OHE to discuss options for participation?
No, you don't need to discuss anything with us about participation with that. So if your dual trainee attends a program that is eligible for federal or state financial aid, your dual trainee is going to be required, regardless of having the dual training grant, they are required to file the free application for federal student aid or the Minnesota State Financial Aid application, which is also known as our Minnesota DREAM Act. They have to complete those if they're in an aid eligible program. These individuals then may be receiving third-party payments through you, the employer, and they may be receiving different grants and they may be receiving different types of loans. All of those things can be added and stacked and put into their education pieces. If they're going to be doing, an aid eligible program and filling out the FAFSA, you don't need to let me know at this point. This is a step we talk about in more depth during the grantee stages. And it is a step that we do validate at our office. So I do check all of your trainees' FAFSAs and make sure that they are on file.
How early will employers be reimbursed for costs of related instruction?
Yes. So with related instruction, typically you will be submitting those invoices at the end of each term or the end of a segment of coursework. And you submit those. It does take us several weeks to review those packets, but once the packet is fully approved, then our accounting office will actually issue the payment within 5 to 7 business days.
If I'm old school, can I print a paper copy so I can review and edit?
You can go ahead and print the request for proposal, but you will be entering everything into the portal system in order for us to get it all processed. If there's an accessibility issue and you're not able to access the portal for those purposes, you can use the request for proposal sections that detail all of the items and fields that are in the portal. You could handwrite them out and then we could go into the system to apply it. But I would try to avoid that because the portal system is going to be used for the entirety of the entire grant program. As if you're awarded, everything is going to be in there. So yes, print request for proposal, write any notes you'd like, put any questions down in there, but please try your best to use the portal.
In the narrative proposal section, if we are applying for multiple roles within one industry, do we put them together in the boxes or do we get separated out?
It's all going to go in the boxes. The idea of condensing it into here is to help you be more concise with your occupation information. So you can be clear and concise and have a clear plan moving forward. So if you have 5 occupations, you are going to be creating verbiage in this area, touching on all 5 of those occupations.
The next one is similar to saving work before submitting so that they can do separate sessions. That's a yes. I'm going to move to the next question. If you are denied a grant, are you told why?
Yes, which the reasoning is because there's not enough money. That's why you're denied. If you move to the review committee process, so if you submit an application and there's something wrong, like it's incomplete, it's not a real dual training program, we're going to tell you that immediately with exact details, and you're going to be, no, you're not moving to the review committee. If you move to the review committee stage, the reason you're not getting an award is because there's not enough funding. And how the priority pieces are all working. So you're going to get your score and you're going to get the feedback from the review committee. So usually what that is our score was just too low in order to qualify for the funding, and there wasn't enough funding.
I didn't see a screen where you can describe training support. Can you speak to what documentation supporting use of those funds will be recorded or required?
Yeah, there is no piece in here for that. You're just letting us know how much money you would like. If you are granted an award, that is then when we're going to do additional steps like a budget policy and procedures piece that you will let us know how all of that's going to break down and how you are going to be applying those. And we will have some suggestions and best practices at that grantee stage and how to utilize that. But as far as the proposal itself, you do not need to elaborate. You just need to tell us an amount.
To clarify, the grant is to assist the student with tuition, books, etc. This does not help the employer with paying wages, but the employer needs to guarantee at least a minimum livable wage. What is that?
With the livable minimum wage, the occupations have been vetted already by the Department of Labor and Industry as meeting that. So as long as you're within those occupations, you can move forward with that piece. The wages come into the proposal narrative when you're talking about the compensation pieces, you'll be detailing that information a bit more as well. And then also the grant is not covering the wages that'll be needed to be paid while they're on-the-job training.
Sorry if missed, but is it $6,000 per calendar year or $6,000 per school year max?
They almost kind of sort of overlap a little bit. It's 6,000 per grant period. So we're going to say grant period. That is when your contract is effective, that date it starts, which will probably be August of 2024, until the expiration date, which will probably be August of 2025. So it's 6,000 within that grant period.
How detailed an org chart do you require?
It needs to be an organizational chart that at least is going to be highlighting those individuals that are going to be working within this grant program.
And then the last one is, will this be recorded for revision?
Yes, absolutely. We will be recording it, and the PowerPoint, both will be posted by the end of next week.
All right, I'll hand it back to you then if you have any closing things.
Beautiful. We are well past our time. But we're recording it. So I'm gonna keep moving forward with it. I'm gonna show you the last couple slides. Just not gonna talk about them in a lot of detail because again, these last slides are really moving into that grantee phase. And I just want you to be aware that these pieces would happen if you become a grantee. You're gonna have mandatory orientation. You will need to attend this. It will be all virtual, but it is mandatory. It's a minimum of 2 hours. All of the grantees and all of their employer partners need to be in attendance. We already have a date and time, so go ahead and mark your calendars now. You'll receive the official calendar invite upon awarding. We will have an optional dual trainee welcome session. This is really just to, get all of your trainees who are going to be participating excited and hear from other trainees who've already been in the program or graduated from the program. And that date and time has also been set for August. And so again, optional, but put it on your calendar now. When we move into the grantee planning stages, it's when things really get unpacked and we get into more details. We're going to have training agreements that are signed between the actual grantee and their training providers, all done in the portal system. We are going to have a work plan and budget process. We're going to have policies and procedures that you're going to be sharing around those pieces. We are going to have each of your trainees do need to sign an agreement with the grant. If any of your trainees have a service agreement associated, we will need copies of that. There will be financial aid applications. I know we answered a question about that. So the financial aid applications do need to happen. And then the expenditures. So we have those different areas of expenditures that are important to touch on with related instruction, trainee supports, and any tax benefit and implications that this may have for you or your dual trainees. There will be business with the state pieces on making sure we get you set up in our systems to pay you out and a grant contract. So these are, again, we have pieces in the request for proposal that talk through all of these, so you'll want to read through them. Grant payments, there is one deadline in the grant payments we can point out now. That is that you do need to submit for reimbursement no later than 45 days after the term or set of courses. So let's say something ends, at the middle of December. By the end of January, then you at least have to have an invoice submitted into our agency. There will be grant reporting requirements. All of our grantees will go through annual reporting that will happen at the end of the grant period. So that'll happen in September of 2025. And then also the grant monitoring, any of them that are at the 50,000 or higher threshold, they will have a mid-year check-in. There will be reporting materials and an actual visit from our agency and the Department of Labor and Industry. That wraps it up. One last note, technical questions. If you have questions about this request for proposal, please do email them directly to me. You need to email all technical questions by April 9th. We will update weekly a document on the request for proposal website answering all of those technical questions you have, so then all applicants have the same information. Maddie, any final questions that have come through?
There are no more in the chat currently.
Beautiful. Wonderful. All right. I'll just wait a couple seconds here. Is there any other questions? You can ask them.
For the mandatory orientation, what time do you expect that to be of day?
So those are on the PowerPoint. It's from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. on June 10th. And it's written into the request for proposal as well. I have those times in there for you. The whole 2 hours, just to confirm. That orientation takes us a while. As you saw, we just went 2 hours and 18 minutes for this piece. So it does take a lot because I want to walk you through all the documents and get you set up. And we only have the one orientation this year that's mandatory. So perfect. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording at this point.